glorified drugs as a door to the demonic. He wrote, quote, "Stab your demoniac smile to my brain. Soak me in cognac, love, and cocaine. Heart on my heart, come out of the rain. Let's have another go of cocaine. Always go on till you have to stop. Let's have another sniff over the top." Robert Anton Wilson, who played a leading role in the counterculture revolution of the 1960s, stated in his book, Sex and Drugs, quote, "Crowley played a decided role in developing the philosophy or mystique of the drug revolution." If Crowley was to implement the satanic new age of Antichrist, he knew, like Hitler, he would have to go after the impressionable youth to succeed. Crowley declared, "Let me seduce the boys of England, and the oldsters may totter, unconverted to their graves. Then these boys, become men, may bring about the new heaven and the new earth. But without an army I am useless. Give me my army, young men, and we will sweep these dogs into the sea." Crowley's new age of Antichrist consisted of many points for implementation if it was to succeed. Crowley taught the need for acceptance of the credo of the new eon, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." In the 1960s, this became "do your own thing." As we have seen, this also incorporated the idea of the drug revolution, but Crowley did not stop there. He also called for a sexual revolution. Crowley also taught the need for the synthesis of Western occultism and Eastern mysticism. He taught that there was to be rebellion against all established authority, especially Christianity. He also taught the establishment of the New World Order under the Antichrist. Crowley saw the United States as a place ripe for his hippie revolution and stated prophetically before his death in 1947, quote, "I turn therefore to America, to a nebulous mass which I expect to develop into an organized galaxy. Every race, language, and creed of Europe is represented. All Americans are eager for power in one form or another. No humbug so outrageous as to deter them from running after the new religion." Crowley went on to state that their dauntless innocence persuade me that just as soon as they have acquired the critical faculty, they will progress spiritually more swiftly and sanely than has ever been known. Crowley had hoped to get his disciples into influential positions in America to influence the masses. One such disciple was former Harvard professor turned drug guru Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary, the defunct Harvard professor, led the drug revolution in the 1960s as he handed out mescaline and LSD like it was candy to the youth. This in turn opened up the hippie youth of the West to the pagan demonic gods of the East, who were also promoted by Aleister Crowley. We can see here that Timothy Leary is under a painting which bears the number of the Antichrist, 666, who is prophesied to rule the world until he's destroyed by Christ at Armageddon. Timothy Leary claimed that he came to the realization that he was to usher in Crowley's new age when he was using Crowley's tarot cards. Leary asked the question, "Who am I and what is my destiny?" Leary claims that he then cut to the Ace of Disc. Robert Anton Wilson declared, "This shows a large disc bearing the Greek letters to Megatherion, the great beast." Leary interpreted this to mean that he is Crowley reborn and is supposed to complete the work Crowley began. On a PBS interview, Timothy Leary let his hair down and admitted that he was carrying on Satanist Aleister Crowley's work and that the 1960s is when the plan began to come to fruition.
Well, I've been an admirer of Aleister Crowley. I think that I'm carrying on much of the work that he started over 100 years ago, and I think the 60s themselves. You know, Crowley said he was in favor of finding your own self and do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, under love. It was a very powerful statement. I'm sorry he isn't around now to appreciate the glories that he started.
As Satan guided Crowley, Crowley declared that his writings were to be, quote, "circulated among the young," end quote. Crowley predicted that America would pick up, quote, "a few axioms on which a working majority can agree, a few dogmas which it could rally." Do what thou wilt, of course, became do your own thing, and if it feels good, do it in the 1960s. Timothy Leary came up with a few of his own.
He looked out at that crowd and he said, "Turn on, tune in,
that's right,
and drop out."
Turn on, tune in, and drop out. We're turned on, and we're tuned in, and we're very dropped out. Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out became turn on, tune in, and take over. As the easily led Crowleyan youth culture was deceived into believing that they had received spiritual enlightenment, when in fact they had swung the door open to Satan and his plan to destroy the world. Satan had effectively slipped in his destructive teachings to undermine traditional moral values through the cloak of a supposed anti-materialistic peace movement. Crowley taught that his satanic doctrine should be cloaked under the lie of love, and he believed the youth would fall for it. If Timothy Leary was Crowley's drug guru of the 1960s, Leary dubbed John Lennon and the Beatles as the four evangelists. The Beatles wrote the song Come Together as a campaign song for Leary's hopeful presidential bid that, thank God, never got off the ground. Crowley taught that he was to be the leader of a youth army and ended up finding himself on the front cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. The song states that it was 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. The album came out in 1967. Crowley had died 20 years earlier in 1947, the year Leary claimed he passed on the baton to him to bring in the Satanic Revolution. This made Sgt. Pepper a likely reference to Aleister Crowley, the father of the new eon. John Lennon summed up the entire Beatle philosophy before his death by quoting Satanist Aleister Crowley. Lennon stated, "The whole Beatle idea was to do what you want, right? Do what thou wilt." Sgt. Pepper's has been considered the greatest concept album in the history of music. In a few moments, we'll see what this concept was really all about.
If you go back and listen to Sgt. Pepper's, they were brilliant. Sgt. Pepper changed the world.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers, one of the most popular bands of the 1990s and into the new millennium, have also promoted homosexuality. On their album Blood Sugar, Sex Magic, they put a K at the end of Sex Magic like Aleister Crowley. At the MTV Music Awards, the Red Hot Chili Peppers gave special thanks to their lord Satan.
First of all, I'd like to thank Satan. I'd like to thank Satan. Thank Satan. Satan.
Crowley's works were not only what spawned the drug revolution, but the sexual revolution as well. Crowley was one of the most immoral and promiscuous men who ever lived, as well as a flagrant and flamboyant homosexual. The Associated Press stated of the Industrial Group Ministries album Psalm 69 that, quote, "The album is named after a chapter of noted occult mystic Aleister Crowley's book, The Book of Lies, which translates as Psalm 69, the way to succeed and the way to suck eggs, Crowley's disturbed reference to oral sex." Part of Aleister Crowley's so-called sex magic included orgies with little boys whom Crowley molested. Crowley taught that in order for the new eon of Antichrist to be established, he had to initiate the world into homosexuality. Crowley began by implementing many of his homosexual sex magic rituals into a secret order called the OTO. The musical group White Stains named themselves after erotic homosexual poetry written by Aleister Crowley, which Crowley grossly entitled White Stains.
They keep with us, then maybe we're going to have to start throwing bombs to make them stop.
We're young, we're queer, we're gonna rule the world. We're young, we're queer, we're gonna rule the world.
You're about to see startling evidence that Crowley had as much influence on the world with his sex revolution as he did with the drug revolution. Aleister Crowley knew that if he was to establish a new age of Antichrist, he would have to destroy God's design for family, consisting of men and women as husband and wife. Crowley therefore declared in his book Magic Without Tears that family was public enemy number one. Crowley, who was out to destroy the family, said this, quote, "Think what horrid images it evokes from the mind. Not only Victorian, wherever the family has been strong, it has always been an engine of tyranny. Curse them. They are always in the way. To the performance of this work, speaking of the new age, the nearest obstacle and the most obvious is the family. Since the Satanic Revolution of the 1960s, there has been an incredible attack on the family as homosexual recruiting has increased dramatically. Crowley made it no secret that he was interested in popularizing homosexual deviancy and even child molestation. Crowley declared, "Let me seduce the boys of England. I shall fight openly for that which no living Englishman dare defend, even in secret, sodomy. And in truth, there seems no better way to avoid a contamination of women. Sodomy is an aristocratic virtue which our middle class had better imitate if they wish to be smart." Crowley's emphasis on homosexuality found their way into mainstream politics initially through homosexual organizer Harry Hay. This is highly significant because Harry Hay, who led the charge of the sodomy revolution in the 60s, was, like Leary, a disciple of Aleister Crowley's teachings. Project 10, which was based on the skewed statistic of sex researcher Alfred Kinsey, who claimed that 10% of the USA was gay, is still a program that is taught in public schools today as homosexuals seek to recruit among the young and impressionable. Project 10 seeks to get impressionable elementary students to explore possibly latent homosexual tendencies by lying to them and claiming that the basis of Kinsey's statistics that 10% of them are homosexuals and need to accept it. Incredibly, along with Harry Hay, the world's most renowned sex researcher Alfred Kinsey was also influenced by the works of Satanist Aleister Crowley. Playboy magazine probably did more than any other publication in the 1960s to popularize the sexual revolution. In fact, Hugh Hefner credited Kinsey and his flawed research in his first issue of Playboy. Incredibly, Robert Anton Wilson, who edited the Playboy forum throughout much of the hippie movement, has admitted to